The NFL Combine is done, which means more mock drafts for us. My name is Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and today we are doing a live mock draft for the Houston Texans. What do I mean by live? We will be the front office in this mock draft simulator going through all the picks. So while we're doing that, leave a comment, let us know what you think of the selections and what you would like to see the team do at each pick. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and tackle that bell to get notified when new videos come out. Now, Ryan, let's pull up PFF here. So let's quickly go
Let's
over
get
the
into it.
couple of picks before that. Wait, hold on, real quick. Wait, is this serious? Cam Ward fell all the way to 21?
Yeah, that's how it went.
Okay.
I,
Well,
I
it
mean,
wouldn't really affect the Texans either way, but
yeah.
that's extremely interesting overall. So Cam Ward 21 of the Steelers, which I guess could be, is Shador Sanders still on the board?
Uh,
Where did Shador Sanders go?
he is still on the board.
Interesting. Should we draft Shador Sanders here? No,
No.
I'm joking. We're not going to do that.
Uh-uh.
So it was Shamar Stewart, Darius Alexander were the two picks before the Houston Texans. Two guys I could see. Well, maybe not Shamar Stewart, but I think Darius Alexander potentially on the defensive interior signed by the Texans here. Now at the 25th overall pick, they did just trade for Christian Kirk. They are trying to improve on the receiving room as well because as of right now, the guys they have on contract are Nico Collins, Xavier Hutchinson, Tank Dell, and Tank Dell is with a major
Yeah.
asterisk. He's probably not going to play in 25. And John Mechie, and now Christian Kirk. So I initially was potentially leaning towards going receiver here. I mean, they need interior offensive line help, obviously. They have drafted Jared Patterson and Juice Scruggs for the past couple of years. Definitely more going to be in that center position as well. But now I think also, too, with the trade for Christian Kirk, I think they can get that spot later. And I think it's going to be interior trenches overall. I think it could.
Yeah.
Tyler Booker's going to be very possible. Gray Zabel, I think, is in there. Maybe Donovan Jackson. Maybe that's the other guys are maybe a little bit better than them. I'm just listing off a couple of names. But I think it's fair to also say Walter Nolan could be in there as well. Who are some of the other defensive tackles that are available?
Yeah, we can find him. Do a quick filter. TJ Sanders, Tyleek Williams would be interesting. He's more of the run stuffer of the group right now. Whereas right now, I think you look like Omar Norman Lott, Shamar Turner, TJ Sanders, Walter Nolan are going to be more like pass rush focused. Walter Nolan is a little bit more stout than some of the others, but like Alfred Collins is there. I think if you really want to go with like a run stuffing defensive tackle, I think maybe you wait until that 89 spot.
I can
And
see
then
that.
and then you can target like CJ West if Jordan Phillips is on the board. That's another one there. So I think there are other routes to maybe go and wait and then go a little bit later on the
Okay.
defensive interior. For me, I guess this is a little vanilla at this point, but Gray Zabel is definitely the pick in my eyes.
Yeah,
Uh,
it just seems like that, and maybe not if it's not Gray Zabel, maybe it's Tyler Booker. But
yeah.
that just seems like the spot. You know that the
Mhm.
Texans are going to take now an interior based off the moves. We're going to find out a lot more next week when free agency comes out. Like, what are some of the other players that they end up signing? A lot of other moves on the interior have already occurred. So let's go Gray Zabel here on this
Yeah.
pick. And the Texans, they
And
only have 6 picks overall in this draft, so they'll need to be
yeah.
very effective at each one.
And we're not doing trades either. The other thing too, so you mentioned this with Christian Kirk being traded to the Texans. I don't think like they still definitely need to address that wide receiver position. The one thing I think it does allow them to just address it later in the draft. This is a pretty deep wide receiver draft class, so I do think it, investing in the first round might not be the best idea. But I think here in the next couple picks, we'll probably want to take a look and kind of see where some value might be at wide receiver.
Yeah, well, I think right here could be very interesting as well. It's I know you end up having Christian Kirk, but I think I'm looking for guys who can maybe complement Nico Collins because he's going to be there for the long haul. And to me, I think that
Mhm.
is going to be more in that slot position because, and once again, too, it's like when you just look at Tank Dell, I think Tank Dell was a great complement number 2 receiver to Nico Collins, but we have no idea the extensiveness. Well, sorry, we know how severe the leg injury is. We have no idea the extent on how closely he can get back to
Mhm.
the Tank Dell that we're familiar with. So I do think Xavier Restrepo is a very possible slot here as well. I know Jalen Knoll is a guy that would fit that as well. I think Jalen Royals is just a receiver that I really like. I think he can be kind of a chameleon in any type of offensive system.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts, and what are some other positions you think they could end up going?
Yeah, I do think Xavier Restrepo could be a high volume slot target for them. Christian Kirk, he has been played the slot in his career, but with that being said, I do think he might be more in like a Z field stretcher type role, and I think Xavier Restrepo could be the kind of chain mover for this offense that I think would be really intriguing. I think going forward. Tez Johnson, he had a really rough combine and just in terms of his long speed. Actually, he performed pretty well in a lot of the other drills. It's just that you can't be 154 pounds and run a 4.51. That's just not going to work at the NFL level. So I feel like
Yeah.
that could be a guy who's going to fall to day 3 at this point. Isaiah Bond would be another interesting one. There's a lot more development with Isaiah Bond than with some of these guys up here with the Jalen Knoll, with uh, Xavier Restrepo and Jalen Royal. So I feel like that's going to be interesting. If you want to wait too, Kyle Williams is going to be a day 3 slot receiver as well. So there are a few options. I don't know if there's anything else besides these receivers
Well,
that you wanted to look at here.
well, and this is kind of one of the things though too is if I look at this team, like they really only have just a couple needs. I like their secondary. They do have they have their franchise quarterback. They have their left tackle in Larry Tunzel. They have the number one receiver. Now they do have Christian Kirk, who's going to be a veteran receiver, but I think they could even double dip in the receiver in these 6 picks. I think they can go. I think they can go if they went offensive line twice, defensive line twice, and then receiver twice as well. Maybe they could throw a running back in there late just because it's such a good running back class. You want to maybe see if you can find a diamond in the rough with Joe Mixon. I mean, that's kind of my mindset as well
Yeah.
because those are going to be their primary needs, and they just need good talent there.
Yeah. Well, then let's take Xavier Restrepo here, and then we can look at the defensive interior, see who falls to us at their next pick.
Yeah,
And then from there, we can kind of go uh, forward and just see what good value we can get.
I like it. I like
All
it. Let's
right.
do it.
But yeah, and I think in that offense too, you have Xavier Restrepo now. He can be that high volume slot target. Nico Collins is going to win down the field. Christian Kirk will provide a good amount of speed, and then you have Dalton Schultz, John Mechie, and a few other guys I think contributing in their own aspect. So that I feel pretty comfortable with that going into 2025, especially too. CJ Stroud has been really good in his first couple seasons. So
Yeah. So here, if we're looking at top players on the board remaining as of right now, Jonas Savanaia, Wyatt Milam, Tate Rutledge, Charles Grant. So a lot of guards here that you can go get. Even Jared Wilson too. My only thing with going Jared Wilson is they've already invested at the center spot with Patterson and Scruggs, as mentioned earlier. Those are the 2 guys as of right now that are depth chart
mhm.
centers, according to our lads. Um, and they're not going to make it to their next pick. All those guys are going to be off the board. While some of
Yeah.
these, let's go look at the defensive tackle spot here, especially around just the rankings of. I'm picking at 126. Scroll down just a tad.
So there's probably going to be a run on these guys right before their next pick. I, I'm kind of leaning Dion Walker. I know he didn't grade out super well, especially for somebody of his size. That is just hard to match those traits. We both like CJ West a lot. Um, I feel like he could be a really good value and a steal for a team this late in the draft.
Yeah, I don't know, but if they need so much help on the interior offensive line, and if Wyatt Milan falls to them or Jonas Savanaia, and both those guys are going to kick in the guard, they're probably going to move on from Shaq Mason or at minimum just make him like they want him to be a backup piece of Tate Rutledge. He was a right guard his entire career at Georgia. Those the other 2 guys before him
That
might be an option, but
that would
or,
transform that interior. You put Gray Zabel at left guard, Tate Rutledge at right guard, and then you'd have Blake Fisher in his second year, Laramie Tunsil, who's been a staple there for a while. I mean that would be a really good offensive line.
well, and that's what I'm saying is if between the 2, I think the offensive line, when it comes to priority on that need to be
Yeah,
fixed, offensive line is definitely weaker overall than the
yeah,
overall sum of the defensive line, you
Mhm.
Will Anderson, and you're going to have
Let's
Danielle Hunter on the other side. That edge rusher, I mean, they bring it up. I'm talking about just the meat in the middle a little bit. And those,
yeah.
Tim Settle and Nico Autry are good. But I think there could maybe still be some improvement as both of
Mhm.
them are also getting up there. Audrey is 35. Tim Settle's only 28. But I'm just talking about just increasing value, increasing the floor on it as a whole.
Let's let's snag Tate Ratledge, and then at 126, we're kind of pigeonholing ourselves to maybe reach on a player, but I think like a Simeon Barrow would be a decent pick then. If
They,
Jamari Caldwell or JJ Pegas falls, then we're
JJ
getting
Pegas would
really
be
good
great.
value.
I like that.
So
Let's do that.
we're taking a chance here on Tate Ratledge, but I do feel like you're right. Solidifying the interior of that offensive line is going to be probably the most important thing
Yeah.
for this Texans team. So
And I
we'll
will
go
say,
Tate
based off the
Ratledge.
past mock drafts we've done doing this, PFF is going to select the guys that we want right before us because they
Yeah,
listen to us.
there's Aeneas Peebles, CJ West, JJ Pegas just went. Okay, with that being said, I think we might have gotten. No, they took.
So you got Riley Mills or you got Simeon
Yeah.
Barrow available.
Um, I'm good with either. It's maybe a little bit of a reach at this point. Simeon Barrow, I think, is going to be he's the better run defender. I think he's going to be a little bit. He's only 290.
He has 7 sacks on the year too.
Yeah,
Let
that
let's
might
go
not be a
Barrow
bad.
here.
Okay, let's
Yeah. Let's
do
go
that.
Barrow. I like our strategy behind that
Okay.
because if we would have looked at the interior guys there, I don't think we would have liked nearly as much as
Mhm.
the options that we would have had.
Yeah. And
So
at this point, I'm pretty comfortable just kind of going best player available. Let just do a quick recap. So Gray Zabel, Xavier Restrepo, Tate Rutledge, Simeon Barrow. We have 2 picks left. Um, I mean, they have a pretty solid cornerback room. They have a pretty solid safety room, I believe, right now. The linebackers are pretty good as well. Edge rusher is pretty good. Tackles, I feel like they're okay. Wide receiver, they're a little thin. One
uh,
sneaky position, I feel like we could maybe look into running back, but
let's look at running back and receiver. Those are the 2 spots I think because you started to build around some really good players on the offensive line, protecting CJ Stroud and improving that offensive line. So now we could see what running backs are available. And I will say, just looking at it, I still would think would rather go.
so one of the guys that I don't think we've even done yet in this series, but Dante Thornton is just an absolute speedster. Ran a 4.37 at 6'4.5", 208 pounds. That would be an interesting down the field threat. I know this is like an old Texans comp, but who was it? Who was the guy when DeAndre Hopkins was there? He'd have like 300 yards in one game. Um,
I'm trying to
shoot,
remember.
he was like a fantasy stud. But he was the old like speedster wide receiver, but he could only like really run in a straight line. Um, oh, it's gonna kill me.
Will Fuller.
Will Fuller, that's right.
Yeah.
Will Fuller, I like you could use him in like a similar role. You have Nico Collins, you now have Xavier Restrepo kind of underneath. You could use Dante Thornton to kind of be a field stretcher at the
Let's
very
do
least.
that.
So okay,
I like that.
I know we could go running back here at 243, but we'll just kind of have to see. I think it'll really
Well,
depend
because
on
you,
best
you
player
get your
available.
underneath guy, your slot guy, and Xavier Restrepo, and then now you got this guy who seems to be very toolsy, could help spread out the field, create more opportunities for Nico, for Restrepo, for Christian Kirk, and so I like that strategy. I've liked the strategy that we've had so far here, and so now here
Mhm.
I think we could go Smile London. We could go with whatever running back that we like. We could go if we want to get cornerback depth overall. The one thing they do have a lot of free agents, especially second string free agents, as of right now. Um, and I think linebacker could be good here if we just want to
Yeah,
get
there
depth.
seems to be a lot of them. Aaron Smith is one from South Carolina State. That's an interesting one. That's where Darius Leonard went, or Shaq Leonard.
Let's do it. Let's pull it.
So I'm not saying he's going to be him, but just
He
interesting
is.
little bloodline there.
He is
So
him.
all in all, only 6 picks for the Houston Texans in this one, but I think they have very specific needs, and so I think we were able to address those. You get some wide receiver depth, especially with Tank Dell's uh, future in uncertainty. Add some depth there, strengthen up the interior of this offensive line because you have the tackles I feel like you want. It's just that interior really started to struggle, both in pass protection and in the run game. And then that should help out Joe Mixon. Maybe they go and sign like a cheap free agent running back. Maybe they get one
Yeah.
in as an undrafted free agent. And then you add Simeon Barrow in there, who can be a rotational defensive tackle for you all the
Yeah.
way down in the 4th round. So,
Well, and they do still have Dameon Pierce. I mean, that's obviously not the
mhm.
preferred option, but it's like, uh, uh, if you're just looking for backup, you can also go get undrafted running backs as well too. And so I think I'm curious to see Texans fans' thoughts on our selection to go with or to double dip on the interior offensive line so early. I just think the way the board fell and you have those guys there, I think that's better value um, than going deep, than reaching on a guy. I would say reaching on a guy, but taking a guy maybe above where he should go, knowing then that a guy like Simeon Barrow or Riley Mills was going to be available also still as well. So I like that route because you got to protect CJ Stroud.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too I think about this class, and it depends on the strategy that you want to take. You can try to dip in a really strong defensive line class as early as you can, or you tell yourself, I'm going to wait on defensive line because I know I can get a similar player later, and I'm going to stock up on more valuable positions for my team right now.
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be a really interesting strategy because I feel like some teams will take advantage of that, and some teams will maybe. Well, I say take advantage of in the fact of they might take advantage of the fact that it's a deep defensive line class and wait, or some teams might pounce early on talent that might fall to them. So I'm really excited for this draft. I think the Texans can get a lot better. I think this is a really good draft class for teams that already have a lot of their star pieces in place. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap this video up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Houston Texans 7-round mock draft. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? Knowing that, we'll see you guys next time.